And we're live.
Hello and welcome to another live demonstration. Today I want to concentrate on Yupo paper. So what's Yupo paper? It's a completely synthetic paper. You can't tear it. It's really tough. It's got a really smooth surface, so paints are not absorbed into it, they sit on the surface. So first thing I did was I tested it. It's really nice with a pencil because you have a really nice, soft, really smooth image. You are able to blend a little bit and you are able to lift. Tried lots of different products on it. Stabilo, which is a water-soluble pen, how does that work? A pen which goes on non-porous surfaces, perfectly fine. Even charcoal, you don't get quite the rich darkness of the charcoal, it becomes a bit more like a grey graphite look, but it sticks, it adheres to the paper. Watercolour pencils, Conte, which is that sometimes called a crayon, so it's the pastel with a bit of wax, so a hard pastel. I haven't done a soft pastel because I'm sure that you won't get the nice feel of pastel. You'll get some marks on it, but it won't look like a pastel, so I haven't tried that one. Watercolour, acrylic inks, alcohol markers. So what I've done is tried lots of different materials to see how they sit on this non-absorbent paper. And the surprising one is the watercolour. So what I want to do is have a look at using watercolour on Yupo. So what's the difference with using watercolour on this paper than using it on a watercolour paper? Traditionally, watercolours are seen to be used on watercolour paper because they're designed for it. They're designed to have enough absorption, but enough for the pigment to sit on the surface. Manufacturers have spent sometimes centuries creating the perfect watercolour paper, and that's what watercolours are designed to be used with. But they do work with other surfaces. This is a non-porous surface, like I said, a totally synthetic paper. You can see there, watercolour is sitting on it. So why would I use watercolour on this kind of paper? One thing, it creates a slightly different texture. It creates a very natural, much more grainy feel on the surface. You can put it on, it goes on quite smoothly, you can see there. You can easily lift off, and which I'm going to do. I've used a tropical phthalo blue here, which is a very staining colour, and you can see there how easy it is to lift off. So think about that. You know, you're doing a painting, you're coming along and you don't like it, I'll just simply wash it all off, start again. This paper can also be used underwater if you wanted to. You can write underwater with it. Using a pencil, just simply write underwater with it. So yeah, we're not all going to be sitting in the pool or sitting under the sea using this paper, but you're out in the rain or you want something that won't wash off. So nice drawings with pencil simply don't wash off, so you can do it in the rain and you're not worried about the paint washing off this paper. So it has great uses for outdoor use. It's very light, very flexible, and you'll notice I haven't taped it down because I don't need to. I'm not worried about it cockling because there's no absorbency, so it's not had any chance to affect the fibres because everything sits on the surface. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little demonstration using the Yupo paper. Frogs and frog spawn, very prevalent at this time of year. So I'm just going to do a little image of a frog on a pond with some frog spawn. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try a wet in wet technique. Simply wet the page. I'm not going to do it all because there's some areas I want to use as wet on dry. So let's see how the colours work on here. And again, keeping my colour palette very simple. Favourite colours, just added the indigo, which is a dark blue. But I'm going to create the greens and the colours I need from these three colours. So Normally, the phthalo blue is a really strong colour. And you can see there how you can swirl. See here how the textures are altering a little bit, and you will find that your colours will granulate more than you expect. But it's all practicing and trying the paper, seeing what it does. You'll find some really exciting effects. Use it with mixed media. It has the ability to be used in so many different ways. Okay, so just creating, not worried about where I'm putting it as such, because I can easily move it. I can wipe it off if I really have gone badly wrong, which let's hope I don't. So, little wet on dry. I would say those grease marks are my greasy fingers. So if I work into it, I'm sure I can cover those areas. That's done. So I've obviously been handling it, and it's just, I've got greasy fingers. So you can see here how the colours are all now swirling and merging together. I want some dark areas. So I try and not have the paint quite as wet. See if I can create some darker areas. I'm just splashing it on. I'm not really thinking about where it's going. I'm not worried about it going over certain areas, because I know I can take it back really simply. It just washes back off. I have to stand back because I can't see under the lights exactly the colours I've put on. So I can't see if I've put enough dark on. But I can always put some more on later. So while that's wet, I'm going to add some texture. So bubble wrap, perfect frog spawn. Just drop it on. Just leave that on a minute while I paint the lily pads. And you'll see I'm going over the frog. Because I can bring him back, I want to lift him back. I want these to be a little bit more yellow. So just going round. And what may happen is because the paper has no absorbency, then I may find some running into each other, which I don't mind. All these things I can sort with later, or often I just like the effect it creates in the end. A lot of it is just see what happens and don't get overwhelmed by the perfect finishing image. You need to learn these techniques before you can get to the ability to create a finished piece. And for me, personally, I sometimes like the look of an unfinished piece. You can see the workings, how people have achieved things, and I think that's just as effective. Okay, so this one. It is already starting to dry, which is really good, because you would expect a non-absorbent surface to take a long time to dry, but it actually doesn't take very long. It dries quite quickly. Not quite as quickly as watercolour paper, but quickly enough. So I think that was a little bit too wet, so I want to start to add more. I have found that you have to just test and work out the strength of colour on this paper, because you've got no absorbency, so sometimes it's a bit too wet, and obviously the wetness from other areas of the page interfere with the areas you're working on. That's fine. See how that dries. Now, I'm not sure this is going to work. Yeah, that's working. Okay, so I'm going to take this off quickly. What I'm going to then do is I'm going to have a break and allow this to dry. Might use a hairdryer on it, and then I can work on the detail. One thing I want to do is, I've just ignored this frog's nose. I think again I've got grubby fingers on it. It's not taking it. It's fine. So it's going to be a surprise a lot of the time, but you can see here that lovely granulated, it's really splitting the pigments. So let's take it off. Ooh. So use different materials on it to see the effects. So I need to let this dry now because I want to be able to work into the areas. So I'll have a short break and join me in a few minutes, and then we can work on detail and start to build up the picture.
Let us bring out the artist in you. If you'd like to learn how to paint or improve your painting, the SAA, Society for All Artists, is here to inform, encourage and inspire you every step of the way. When you become an SAA member, you get so many benefits, including the free bi-monthly newsletter Paint, packed with inspiring step-by-step projects, fascinating articles, and detailed information to get your creative juices flowing. Discounts on over 13,000 art products featured on the SAA website and in the Home Shop catalogue, with free order line and free delivery in the UK mainland. A devoted SAA team on hand to answer your questions and give you the confidence and motivation you need to start painting and develop at a pace that suits you. Plus, a free welcome pack filled with gifts and practical help to get you started, as well as the opportunity to make friends with like-minded people.
First thing to be a member is the inspiration from the magazines, to be able to purchase things at a very reasonable price.
Yeah, you get the reduction on all the materials, the advice you get.
I can shop from home.
It's a community.
It seemed like a very friendly sort of organisation.
If somebody's thinking of joining, don't spend too long thinking. Just join. They'll love it.
And we're back.
Hello and welcome back. So I've had a chance to give most of this a quick dry, and you can see now the textures that this has created, the lovely swirls here and the granulation, and the bubble wraps worked really effectively. So now I just want to start to build up and work on the next layer. What you do have to be aware of is getting your brush very wet for this next layer, because it will lift off. Which is a technique I'm actually going to use, but in some areas I want to make sure I don't. So all I'm going to do now is I've put some darker, the indigo, and I'm just bringing out, covering some areas that I want to cover, and I want to just highlight some of these frog spawn. And I'm not going to go around all of them. I just want to show that there is something underneath. So this is called negative painting, where you're painting around the darkness around a shape. This is quite a interesting technique because you have to think about what you're painting. And you can see that how that's pushing those shapes forward.
A quick question for you, Anita.
Yes.
Chrissy, who's watching, wants to know if you'll be able to use coloured pencils on top of the watercolour.
I haven't tried it. I would think so. Coloured pencils just need a surface to be able to grip to, and this is just, watercolour is created a texture surface, so I would think so. Always with any material or anything you've not tried before, test it. See what happens. If you use things a certain way, or you're used to using coloured pencils in a certain way, see how they work on this paper. So I haven't used it. I can't see that it won't, so have a go, and I'll be interested to see how, if you have, and if you could feedback, and we can share that with everybody else. So thank you for that question. So and you can, I don't know if you can see, but it's starting to dry already. So like I say, it dries much quicker than you think. I'm skipping around because my brain is working, as always, in a bit of a butterfly way. I'm skipping around and thinking about areas I need to work on. You can see there how I'm just swirling because I want to create the texture, but I want some darkness under the lily pad because it's sitting and creating a dark space. So I've gone over the frog's fingers or toes, I don't know what they're called on the front legs. But that's really easy to solve because lift out is a really good technique with this. So that's 2 techniques. The negative painting, and I'm going to do lifting out. And if I really have gone bad, I just get a sponge and wash it all off. So great for practicing, great for learning and finding different techniques. Watercolour will wash off. Other mediums probably not, depending on what they are. An alcohol ink may wash off if you use ethanol alcohol on it. Coloured pencils may rub off, but they may adhere. Again, it's testing. I know with a graphite pencil, it does rub off, but that it does on normal paper anyway. So all these things, questions you ask, find out, try, test, and you'll maybe find something different and new. So I know a lot of people use Yupo and use alcohol inks because of the wonderful spreading properties of it. But I'm sure a lot of people don't realise that it's very multimedia. And you'll notice I've not taped it down. It's no cockling because it's no absorption. So all those issues I have with paper, I'm kind of solving by using this. So this is a bit tedious, but you can see actually don't need huge amounts, and I'm not going to fully overwork. One thing I do notice is I put the colour on quite strong. It tends to lighten a lot more than you anticipate. So it may be you take a few more layers just to build up the darker tones that you may be looking for. Or it's a case of an opaque colour. The colour I'm using is, I think, semi-transparent. So it's not got the total covering power as an opaque colour. So maybe it's a good time to add gouache. Or just make sure that you've chosen a more opaque colour to cover. Quite like that. I like some of the looseness, but you can see there how that's just now started to build up. I mean, if I have more time, I can go back, but I like feel different textures and different areas in the painting. So that has worked quite well. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to now go on to the frogs. So the lily pads are not bad. I just want to sharpen. So I'm just going back in with another layer. I've used my brush and I've used part of it with yellow and part of it with the blue, and I've not mixed them together. So it's creating this lovely two-tone effect. So you can see now I'm just starting to add. I do know this yellow is cadmium lemon, so I know it's opaque, which means it will cover. So you can see there how the yellow is covering nicely the edges. So I know a lot of people get confused about transparent and opaque colours. To be honest, first time I say just learn your colours. Just find out what works for you. And then the more you paint with them, the more you understand, well, that didn't cover the way I want it, or in that technique it didn't cover. I just think learning, you can tell people all about transparency, you can advise, but it's not a good replacement for actually trying and seeing and finding out for yourself. Because you may find something that someone else may not have noticed. So I think we can all learn from all stages, from total beginners, may see something that a professional has not seen or overlooked. So I think we've all got a lot to give in the art world. Okay, there we go. So I'm not worrying about going over the frog, because I'm going to try a lift out technique on this. What you do find is getting it very smooth. You can still see the brush marks. maybe with a different brush I could get it a little smoother, but I do find you do see the lines on it. Sometimes they disappear and dissipate, but you do see the texture. For me, it's not a problem. What I can do is try use a damp brush and just soften. You can see there, just softening a little bit, and actually it's bringing off the colour. So it's just trying different techniques, just seeing what works, because it is a different feel surface, a different surface. It's not absorbent, you've still got a lot of play. You can see there how that's taking it off. And I'm able to soften, move around a little bit and add some more light and dark. Okay. I'm not going to overly work this one because it's further back, but I do want to just sharpen and add a little bit more depth to it. But that's it, no more, because I just like to let things dry and just see what happens after that. Right, okay, so I think it's time to work on the frog. So I'm just going to use some of the indigo and some of the yellow because I want quite a dark. So I'm contrast, the lily is quite bright green, and you've got some bright colours here. I want the frog to stand out, so I'm going to try and use quite a dark green under here, so the nose under here, and then the leg. So, like I said, I've lost some of the hands, but I can bring that back in a minute. I'm just thinking about the darkest areas, which will be the areas that are underneath. I'm saying the light's probably coming from here, so definitely at the back it's going to be darker, but across its back it should be lighter. Plus it could have just got out of the pond, so it could be shiny or wet. So again, you're thinking, I haven't got the original image because it's kind of amalgamation. It's kind of I knew the shape of the frog, so I've kind of put it together. So I'm not sure the actual lighting, and this is where you have to use your imagination, but also think about it. You're thinking, right, the light's coming from here. If you're struggling with light, literally put a cross either outside your board and keep reminding yourself the light's coming from here, so where will it hit? Oh yes, it would hit the top of here. Oh no, it's not going to hit under here, that's going to be dark. So just use devices to help. So you can see how I can actually work quite tightly and a little bit more detailed on here. So let's bring out the eye. Just start to thin out and wet. I think this is really quite nice because you get texture. You can create the texture on the frog. And if I've overdone it, I've lost the light, which I probably will do, I can easily, so easily bring it back, and I'll show you that. I'm going to purposely lose the light I was looking for because I want to show you how easy it is to solve. There we go. So just filling it all in. I want to show he stands out, so I need to change the colour a little bit. Okay, so again, I lost the fingers here. So I've kind of made, that's very flat at the moment. What I'm going to do is I'm going to lift out. So I just think it needs a little bit more yellow, a little bit more colour before I try this. Okay. So you see how just adding that yellow has just made a difference too. And like I say, I know this is an opaque yellow, so it will just cover. Okay, so now just clean my brush off, and I'm just having a damp brush, so I can now. Problem with the damp brush, it sometimes starts to splay a little bit, and I want a point can now start to lift back and bring back some of those shapes I'd lost. So you can see how easy it is to alter. I'm not going to say fix because it may not be a case of fixing, it may be just a case of altering and manipulating a little bit more.
I have another question for you.
Yes.
Can you reactivate the paint once it's dry?
Yes, it's watercolour. So just the same as you would do any watercolour, you just add water and reactivate, which is why I can lift off. So even when this is dry, I can just wash it off or rework, or as you can see here, lift off. So yeah, absolutely. I'm using watercolour. Depends on the paint you use, whether it's reactable, but watercolour is lovely for this, being able to rework and relift. And you can see here, I do the eye. I get lost if I can't see the animal's eye. I just kind of feel a little lost. So again, what you need to do is find a brush that works best for you. It could be a stick. You can scrape back, use a knife and actually scrape back into it. You don't have to use a brush for everything. You know, use different tools. This is a synthetic brush because I like the little bit more stiffness of the bristles, and it doesn't hold as much water, which is exactly what I'm looking for. If I want good water holding properties, I want a natural hairbrush. But in this case, that's not what I'm looking for. So I think I don't want to lose all the colour underneath. I need to work something on the eye. But I think that's starting to come up quite nicely. And you can see I'm just dampening off the brush each time. And when it gets too dry, I can tell because the bristles start to splay. So I just need to give it another dip in the water. Okay, you can see how clean that comes off. I don't want to take it all off, just want to add some highlights. I can also soften and blend as well, still keeping the colour on there. So work on this leg. I know that area needs a little bit more work, but sometimes you need to work on other areas before you go back to it, just so then you know what you need to achieve. Okay, so let's bring out this foot. It's so much easier than using watercolour paper to be able to lift off. So the lift off technique can be used very efficiently in this paper. And like I say, I can just wash it all off. So practice, practice, practice. I'm not wasting paper, I just try again, and then I can try again. Okay, so let's work on this eye, which is bugging me, and I know he would have a raise on his head there, or her, not sure.
It's frog spawn, it's probably a her.
It could, we're not being sexist, you know, the male might be interested and do his parental duties. I doubt it, but
Oi.
I don't know how frogs work. They may be very good parents, both of them. Okay. So I know I need to, I've not got a complete dark eye, and I think definitely now need to darken, just see what's not working or needs to work. So at the moment there's something not working here, so let's just see if taking it off will work. Don't think his arm's working, shape may be wrong. Let's alter that. Might make him a bit fatter. That could be the problem, he's not big enough here. Like I say, I haven't got the reference picture to go back to, but I can feel and see that that's not working as well. Okay, right. At the moment, that frog is working okay. Like I say, I could work on it and revisit. I just want to now make sure that there is some shadow so that we can change and make sure that we know that the frog is sitting on the lily pad and that it's not just floating there. And I want to add some darker tones. So maybe I need a much stronger colour, and like I say, a much more opaque colour. But that's, with this, it's just the beauty of being able to relayer and go over and think about, I don't want to lose is the shape. It's okay, that's working fine. So thinking about what the frog's sitting on. So just want to lighten off here. You can see how clean. I just want to really show you. I know that was very fine detail. I just want to show you how really clean you can get it back by just adding some highlights onto the lily pad. And again, you may find a different type of tool or a different brush works for you. So, might be a little bit more than you would normally see, but I just want to show you. Again, here. I'm using the heel of the brush. So you can see there, one last thing I think I want to do. Don't know if you can see the frog, and I can always work on and just add a few touches. To be honest, if I'm not been able to get the strength of colour with the watercolour, I can put a pen on. I can go around with a black marker pen or a black fine liner. There's nothing stopping me just mixing my media. I know these lilies have a little touch of red around them, and I want the red not to be very stark. I want it to mix in with the green, and you can see how that's happening there. So actually, just by adding a little touch of colour, it's just moved all the focus away and changed where you're putting the focus. So I know it goes round here. I might just make it blend in a little bit. So I don't know how that looks to you, but you know, I'm quite happy with it. Normally I would work a little bit more, take some more white off, probably work a little bit more into here, but I know I can. That's the beauty of using this paper. I know I can. I have that ability to be able to do and lift back to that lovely, really clean white. So Yupo paper, synthetic paper, not worried about it cockling, works perfectly fine with watercolour and creates lovely textures. So have a go, try different mediums on it, see what pens work, how pencil works on it, coloured pencil like I was asked earlier. So, you know, have fun. The main thing is to have fun and to find out, you know, techniques for yourself. So join me soon for another live demonstration.